For 15 years, our marriage felt like a constant. It was the one fixed point in a world that never stopped spinning. It was the quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper. The comfortable silence that only comes from knowing someone so completely, you don't need words. It was the inside jokes whispered across a crowded room, the shared history written in the laugh lines around our eyes. Our life wasn't a fairy tale, no, but it was real. It was a sturdy house built brick by brick, a foundation I honestly believed was unshakable. I thought I knew every room in that house, every secret corner. I was wrong. There was a hidden wing, a whole other life, locked away where I couldn't see it. And a single tiny digital key was about to bring the entire thing crashing down around me. After 15 years of what I thought was a happy marriage, I found my husband's second phone. Unlocking it didn't just expose a secret. It unlocked a hidden life I never knew he had. It shattered our reality, leaving me standing in the wreckage with the impossible question of whether trust, once broken, can ever truly be pieced back together. The man I knew just vanished in that moment, replaced by a stranger who had built an entire life in the shadows of our own. I met Mark in my late 20s. He was charming, not in a loud, showy way, but with a quiet confidence that just drew you in. He listened more than he spoke, and when he looked at you, you felt like the only person in the universe. We married under an old oak tree in my parents' backyard, promising a lifetime of honesty and partnership. And for the longest time, it felt like we were keeping that promise. 15 years is a long time. It's long enough to build a home, not just a house. Our suburban two-story was filled with the echoes of our life together. The pencil marks on the doorframe tracking our son, Leo's height. The scuff marks on the floor from when we tried to learn ballroom dancing from a YouTube video one New Year's Eve, laughing until we couldn't breathe. The worn-in spot on the sofa where Mark would sit every evening, and where I'd curl up next to him, my head on his shoulder. We had routines that felt as comfortable as a favorite sweater. Taco Tuesdays, Friday night movies with a giant bowl of popcorn, the annual camping trip to the lake where Mark taught Leo how to fish, his patience a quiet, steady thing. He was a good father, an attentive and loving one. He was, I thought, a good husband. He'd leave a rose on my pillow after a business trip. He'd text me during the day just to say he was thinking of me. He held my hand through the terror of my mother's illness and held me when she was gone. His silent strength a lifeboat in my grief. This was my world. This man, this life, this family. I felt secure in it, proud of it. So when the first hairline crack appeared, I explained it away. It's what you do when you're terrified of the alternative. You tell yourself it's just the house settling. The first crack was his phone. For over a decade, his phone was basically communal property. Hey, can you look up the address for Sarah's party? Can you text my sister back? My hands are full. Passwords were a joke, shared and forgotten and shared again. Then about a year ago that changed. It was subtle at first. He started placing its screen down on the counter. If it buzzed while we were watching TV, he'd glance at it. But instead of replying openly, he'd angle his body away, his shoulders creating this small, private wall. I remember one evening, I reached for it to Google an actor's name. He was in the kitchen and his head snapped up. "I'll get it," he said, with this weird urgency in his voice as he rushed back. He took the phone from my hand, his fingers brushing mine, and the touch felt different. Not intimate, just proprietary. Guarded. "What did you need?" he asked, his eyes glued to the screen. I told him and he found the answer, but he didn't hand the phone back. He slipped it into his pocket. A cold knot formed in my stomach, a feeling so alien I didn't even have a name for it. I told myself I was being ridiculous. He's entitled to his privacy, I thought. Maybe it's healthy to have boundaries. I wanted to be a trusting wife. Then came the late nights at the office. Mark's job was demanding, but his schedule was always predictable. Suddenly, last-minute projects and emergency client dinners were happening every week. He'd come home smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, a floral scent I couldn't place. When I mentioned it once, teasing, "Smelling good tonight, who were you trying to impress?" his face just shut down. "It was probably someone at the restaurant," he said flatly, and turned away to shower, leaving me alone in our bedroom. The casual affection, a kiss on the forehead as he passed by, a hand on my back, it all started to fade. He was like a ghost in our own home, physically there but emotionally 1,000 miles away. The excuses became an endless list I started to memorize. I became an unwilling accomplice in his lies, repeating them to friends when they asked why Mark missed dinner. "Oh, work has been just insane." I was protecting him, but I was also protecting myself, protecting the image of the perfect marriage I'd built in my head. The criticism started next. It was sneaky, like a slow-acting poison, little jabs that were easy to brush off on their own, but together they wore me down. "Are you really going to wear that? It's a little snug, don't you think?" he'd say, looking up from his phone with a small frown. He criticized how I loaded the dishwasher, the dinner I cooked, the way I parented Leo. It felt like he was looking for faults, trying to create distance. Each comment was a small paper cut, and I felt like I was bleeding from 1,000 of them. I started to feel small and insecure. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the anxious woman staring back. I tried talking to him, asking what was wrong, why he seemed so distant. He'd flip it back on me with practiced ease. "I'm just stressed from work, and honestly, you've been so needy lately. I feel like I can't do anything right. I'm walking on eggshells." Gaslighting. I know the word now, but back then I just felt confused and guilty. Maybe I was the problem. The final red flag, the one even I couldn't ignore, was the money. We had a joint account for household stuff and our own credit cards, a system that worked for years. I was paying bills one afternoon when I saw a series of strange charges on our shared credit card. $100 bouquet of flowers from a florist I'd never heard of. Dinner for two at a trendy romantic restaurant he'd never taken me to. Several large cash withdrawals from an ATM in an unfamiliar part of town. My heart hammered against my ribs. I called him, my voice shaking a little. "Hey, I was just looking at the credit card. Did you have a business dinner at La Lune last week?" There was a pause. A silence so heavy it felt like an admission. "Yes," he finally said. "With the team. Celebrating a new contract." His voice was too smooth, too rehearsed. The flowers, he claimed, were for a retiring colleague. The cash for a team lunch. Lie after lie, each one thinner than the last. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there, listening to him breathe, and felt a canyon opening between us. He was a stranger lying next to me. The man whose every mood I could once read was now a locked box. The need to find the key became an obsession. My gut, the intuition I had silenced for months, was screaming. It was telling me to stop making excuses and look for what I was so terrified to find. For a split second, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe I was wrong. Then the home screen loaded. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't filled with apps for banking or news. It was starkly minimal. A messaging app, a photo gallery, a calendar, and contacts. It was a phone with one specific purpose. A burner phone. My thumb hovered over the messaging app. This was the point of no return. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to throw the phone against the wall and shatter it. But I couldn't. I had to know. I tapped the icon. The app opened to a single conversation with a contact named Jay. The last message was from this morning. "Can't wait to see you tonight." Counting down the minutes. XO. My stomach lurched. He wasn't in Chicago. He was seeing her. Tonight. With a feeling of paralyzing dread, I started scrolling up. Months of messages spooled out before me. It was like reading a novel about a man I'd never met. The early messages were flirty, filled with the kind of compliments he hadn't given me in years. "Jay. Just saw your quarterly report. You're a genius. Mark. Only trying to impress my favorite consultant. Then it escalated, Mark. I'm looking at you across the conference table and it's taking all my self-control not to walk over and kiss you. Jay. Who says you should have self-control? The blood drained from my face. They worked together. This wasn't a stranger. I kept scrolling, my vision blurring. They had nicknames. He was she was his sunshine. They talked about books and music, things he and I hadn't discussed with any real passion in years. He was sharing pieces of his soul with her. Pieces I thought were mine. Then I saw my name. Or what they called me. The warden, Jay. Will the warden let you out to play this weekend? Mark. Have to be careful. The warden is getting suspicious. Always asking questions. It's suffocating. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. Suffocating. He described our life, my love for him, as a prison. The woman who had supported his career, raised his child. I was his warden. A raw, wounded sob tore from my throat. The pain was physical, like a fist squeezing my heart. After a few numb minutes, a cold resolve settled in. I wasn't done. I picked up the phone and went to the photo gallery. It was a gallery of their life together. The life I was funding. There were selfies of them at that romantic restaurant. La Lune, heads close together, smiling a smile I hadn't seen on his face in years. She was beautiful, of course. Younger. There were photos of them on a hike he told me was a boys' weekend. There were pictures of the flowers from our credit card statement, sitting on a bedside table that wasn't ours. But the most devastating photos were in a hidden folder, titled Us. It was full of intimate photos. Them in bed, wrapped in hotel sheets. Her wearing his shirt. A picture he'd taken of her sleeping, a tender, adoring shot. He used to take pictures like that of me. The memory, once a comfort, was now poison. I had to see it all. I went to the calendar. Every late night at the office was marked dinner with Jay. Every business trip was a weekend getaway. A date was circled in red 2 months from now. Our anniversary. A week before my own birthday. My gaze fell on an entry for next month. Look at apartments. My breath hitched. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a future. He was going to leave us. He wasn't just cheating. He was building an exit ramp out of our marriage. I found a notes app. Inside, a single horrifying entry. A pros and cons list. On one side, stay. On the other, leave. Under stay, he had written, Leo. Don't want to hurt him. Financial stability. Easier. Comfortable. The house. Avoids the drama. Under leave, there was only one line. A dagger to my heart. Happiness. Real love with Jay. That was it. 15 years of marriage, our family, reduced to comfortable and convenient. My entire existence in his life was a barrier to his happiness. A volcanic rage built inside me. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He called me the warden, while he was the one planning an escape from a prison of his own making. He judged me and made me feel like I was the problem, all while living this lie. Then I heard the front door open. My head snapped up. I looked at the clock. 3 p.m. He wasn't supposed to be home. He was supposed to be meeting Jay. Sarah? He called out. I'm home. The trip got cut short. His voice, once my greatest comfort, now sounded sinister. I stood up, the secret phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. The time for discovery was over. I walked to the top of the stairs and looked down at him. He looked up, a fake, tired smile on his face. Tough trip, he started to say. Then his eyes fell to the phone in my hand. The smile vanished. The color drained from his face. He knew. In that silent, horrifying moment, he knew that I knew. The silence was thick with every lie, every betrayal. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, me at the top, frozen. His face was a mask of pure panic. I held up the phone, its screen still glowing. His other life lit up for me to see. Her name is Jessica, isn't it? My voice was eerily calm, which seemed to scare him more than shouting. He just stared. You call her Sunshine, I continued, taking a slow step down. And she calls me the warden. Is that right? He flinched. Sarah, listen. He stammered, stepping back. It's not what you think. The classic pathetic line. The audacity was insulting. It's not what I think. I shot back, my voice finally cracking with rage. I don't know, Mark. I think you have a second phone. I think you've been having an affair for over a year. I think every late night and business trip was a lie. I think you've spent our money on her, building a secret life while I was at home raising our son. Am I close? I was halfway down the stairs. He looked trapped. It just happened, he whispered. I never meant to hurt you. You never meant to hurt me. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Mark, this wasn't an accident. This was a campaign. You bought a secret phone. You wrote a pros and cons list about whether to stay with your comfortable life or leave for real love. You were planning to obliterate me. I reached the bottom of the stairs and stood right in front of him. I wanted him to look into my eyes. You let me believe I was the problem. I whispered, my voice trembling. You criticized me, pushed me away, made me feel crazy. You watched me tie myself in knots trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. All while you were texting her about how suffocating I was. That wasn't an accident, Mark. That was deliberate cruelty. Tears streamed down his face. I know. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I was wrong. So wrong. I ended it. That's why I'm home. I ended it this afternoon. I was going to tell you. I swear. His words were just convenient, self-serving noise. Where's Leo? I asked, my voice sharp. He's at Mike's house for a sleepover. He choked out. Thank God. Good, I said, my mind suddenly clear. Pack a bag. What? Sarah, no. Please. We can fix this. I'll do anything. Therapy. I'll quit my job. Please. He reached for me and I recoiled. Don't touch me. I snarled. Do you have any idea what you've done? Trust isn't a plate you can glue back together. You took a hammer to it. It's dust. There is nothing left to fix. I walked past him into the living room. The photos on the mantel, our wedding bringing Leo home, were relics of a lie. He followed me, still begging. I love you, he cried. I know I messed up, but I love you. No, I said, turning to face him. You don't get to say that word to me. Not anymore. The man I loved wouldn't be capable of this. He wouldn't have been able to look me in the eye every day while living a double life. So either he never existed or you killed him. Either way, he's gone. And the person standing in front of me is a stranger. And I don't let strangers sleep in my house. The fight went out of him. He nodded slowly and walked upstairs. I listened to the sounds of him opening drawers, the zip of a suitcase. Each sound was a final end to a chapter of my life. 15 minutes later, he came back down, a duffel bag in his hand. He paused at the door. Sarah? Just go, Mark, I said, not looking at him. Just go. The door clicked shut. And then silence. A silence more profound than any I had ever known. The house felt like a cold, empty tomb. I sank to the floor and finally I let myself scream. The days that followed were a blur. The grief was a physical presence, a heavy cloak I couldn't take off. There were moments of pure rage, and then waves of sorrow so deep, I felt like I was drowning. Telling Leo was the hardest thing I've ever done. I kept it simple. Dad is going to be living somewhere else for a while. We both love you very much, and that will never change. The confusion in his eyes was a fresh wound left by Mark's selfishness. The first few weeks were about survival. I hired a lawyer. I froze our accounts. I began untangling my life from his. At night, the impossible question haunted me. The one he kept asking in his texts, "Can we fix this?" I thought about it. I thought about the 15 years that weren't a lie. About the man who held me when my mother died. A small, terrified part of me wanted to try. But then I'd remember. I'd remember being called the warden. I'd remember the list. I'd remember that he saw me as an obstacle. I could forgive maybe one day, but I could never trust him again. I would spend the rest of my life looking over his shoulder, checking his phone. I would become the very warden he accused me of being. I deserved more than that. Leo deserved more. My resolution was quiet. It wasn't about revenge. It was the day I packed his things into boxes. It was the day I filed for divorce. It was the day I started therapy, not to fix our marriage, but to fix myself. This journey is nowhere near over. There are good days and terrible days. But for the first time in a long time, the future feels like it's mine. It's a blank page, and I get to write on it. The pain of this betrayal will always be part of my story, but I've decided it won't be the defining chapter. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not alone. Maybe you're here right now, standing in the wreckage of a life you thought was safe. What would you have done? What was the moment you knew it was truly over? Let me know in the comments. Sharing our stories is how we start to heal. Rebuilding a life from scratch is daunting. Some days it feels like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But in the quiet moments, I'm finding a new kind of peace. I'm rediscovering the woman who likes to hike on Saturday mornings, who can read a book for an entire afternoon without feeling guilty. The woman who is a good mother and a good friend, not because a man validates her, but because she simply is. Can trust once broken be pieced back together? For me, the answer was no. But I learned a more important lesson. The most critical trust is the trust you have in yourself. For over a year, I silenced my own intuition. I let someone else's lies become my reality. I will never make that mistake again. My marriage is over. The house we built is gone. But my foundation, the one that truly matters, is the one I'm building within myself. And this time I know it's unshakable. This time I'm building it for me. If you watch this story, tell me in the comments honestly. Which country are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I am eager to wait for your kind comments.